far right is doing. They are already attacking the incoming Democrats who are simply exercising their oversight authority
just
in
like
Congress.
they did, just like the Democrats did President Trump when they were talking about impeaching him. This is what I think we see: another episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, with the Democrats running the House of Representatives. This is where we begin to get very problematic versus them taking the reins and saying, "Listen, let's focus on the issues that the American people care most about." They're talking about jail time, impeachment.
Okay, guys, we save time by talking over each other, so that always helps. I appreciate it. Have a good night. We shall see. The investigation goes on. When it stops, really nobody knows. All I know is the 5 is now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Morgan Ortegas, Juan Williams, Dana Perino, and Brian Kilmeade. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is the 5. Democrats cranking up the outrage machine and going after President Trump following the release of court memos on Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen. Party leaders now pushing impeachment and also the possibility of prison time for the president.
Certainly they'd be impeachable offenses because even though they were committed before the president became president, they were committed in the service of fraudulently obtaining the office.
There's a very real prospect that on the day Donald Trump leaves office, the Justice Department may indict him, that he may be the first president in quite some time to face the real prospect of jail time.
The walls are closing in on Donald Trump and his inner circle, including his family.
This criminal must be brought up by the Congress of the United States for impeachment.
When the evidence becomes so clear that you very likely have a criminal sitting in the Oval Office, what is the Congress left to do at that point?
Okay. President Trump fighting back, saying there's no smoking gun, no collusion, and that the payment detailed in the Cohen report was a simple private transaction. Juan, I'm going to use an analogy here. Let's say Hillary Clinton...
You didn't ask permission.
Because Gutfeld's not here. Let's say Hillary Clinton decided to get Botox in September 2016. She paid, $10,000, $20,000, whatever Botox costs. Decides she wants Botox.
It's not $20,000.
Whatever it costs. I don't know what it costs.
Not that I know. Not that
okay,
I know.
Whatever she pays, okay? And she doesn't report it to the FEC afterwards. And she's elected president, and then the Republicans find out, oh, Hillary got Botox, and she didn't report it on the FEC filing. And now she needs to be impeached. What would be the difference?
The difference?
Tell me what the difference would be, Mr. Williams.
You know, sometimes I think it's Christmas season. I've got to be nicer. But Jesse, that's
private transaction.
Jesse, is that a
private
ridiculous
transaction?
Private transaction
between her and the Botox lady.
Are you? I mean, Jesse, we're talking here
consensual
about campaign
Botox
finance violation potential by individual one, according to his fixer, who said individual one told him to make this payment at a critical moment in the midst of a campaign.
Okay, the Botox would have been a critical moment.
Well,
before the debates, Williams, right before she's on TV.
Oh, yeah. Remember, I think the better analogy, remember when she was sick and people asked her if she was sick and she didn't say, and then she was stumbling to the car. Maybe you could say, oh, we should tell people if you're sick.
It's not a financial transaction.
But similarly, I would say that when someone, in fact, hides relevant material from the voters, the argument is you're deceiving us. You're
okay. Well, Juan, if you can impeach a politician for being deceitful, we'd never have a president.
That's a different question. You didn't say impeach. You asked an analogous question, but that's not impeach.
Well, they're
is a
trying to impeach
issue.
him based off of this private transaction.
This is Republican grievance politics. Oh, they're going to impeach him. No, they're not even in power yet, Jesse.
Well, they're talking a lot about impeachment because we watched that sound right there. So Dan Backer, a lawyer who does this for a living, says that this is brand protection. And brand protection is not a campaign finance violation, and it's perfectly legal.
Huh. Well, I guess they could try that and see how it works. I mean, campaign finance violations, I think that's the least interesting part of all of this, partly because there is the over-criminalization of campaign finance violations. But we do have campaign finance laws. It's just that they're not exactly clear-cut. And after John Edwards' situation, remember, he was acquitted, but only by a jury. Mm-hmm. That was actually went all the way. So the Justice Department had said, look, we have to fulfill our obligation and prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. But the brand protection one, I haven't heard that one.
That's a good one.
To use it.
You're welcome, if you're watching. So the other issue, too, because the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress, they have this big slush fund where they're paying out all these non-consensual sexual settlements over the last 10 years to the tune of, I think, several $1 million. And then this is a consensual transaction and payments were made. What's the difference?
I think a couple of things are going on. Whether you are all for Donald Trump or against Donald Trump, by the way the indictment was written, according to legal experts, with the flowery language instead of the dry legalistic approach, it looks as though they're going after Trump. There's no doubt about it. So whether you think they should or shouldn't, let's just put that aside for a second. They are going after Trump to try to say that he directed Michael Cohen, because he already said it during Michael Cohen's sentencing, they directed Michael Cohen to make the payments. So Trump's got to think of not whether it's right or wrong or comparing to Hillary Clinton or not. It doesn't matter. The Southern District of New York is trying to take him down. Now, the question is, what exactly did he deceive the American people on and get to his office falsely? Did anyone actually think that Donald Trump was the second coming of some high-level hope? No, they knew his background. They knew what was going on. And this is no different from if you're in a business world and your partner doesn't like you and you're going to run for office, that partner comes out and says, you know, that Brian Kilmeade, he robbed me of money. And whether you did or not, you just don't want that partner coming forward. I got to run for office. So you walk up to the guy and go, or the woman, you say, listen, what's it going to take to get this, put this away? I got to run for office. Boom, you get it done. So Michael Cohen directing, being directed or not being directed, that's what the Southern District of New York thinks is a problem. And if he doesn't take it serious, he's foolhardy. He's got to get on the offensive here, address it directly, get a legal strategy, and go after it. Opinion should not matter. Don't cheerlead or boo. You just got to get, this is the reality. This is the game.
It is interesting, Morgan, that now they're not trying to go after him for collusion or obstruction. Now it's just a campaign finance violation.
They're doing
come
both.
a long way.
They're doing both,
That's
though.
true. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the Botox analogy.
Yeah,
I think that's airtight.
That one.
Airtight, take it to the bank.
Insurance should be covering that.
You know, if I don't think that this
Wait,
works.
insurance covers that?
Yeah.
I don't think impeachment over these sorts of issues worked for Clinton politically. Like for the Republicans, it backfired on the Republicans. I think it would backfire on the Democrats. I mean, let's just think about this. If you start to have impeachment hearings in the House or and then later in the Senate, think about
there.
Whose side are you on?
I know you don't want to say Sharks.
Listen, so they're thinking about Meadows and Litzinger, I think, and Mulvaney, I've heard, and Mnuchin's name. But I just think they need a political guy that has experience that can come in and defend the White House from the Democratic onslaught of subpoenas, and also try to help Trump get reelected. John Kelly's not a political guy. He got along with Trump. Ultimately, it's about personal chemistry.
Yeah.
That is the most important.
You spend a lot of
thing.
time with the chief of staff when you're president, Morgan, and they are moving from the legislative phase of the first 2 years of the presidency into the political one as they prepare for re-election, as well as all the other stuff going on.
Well, I have an idea for who should be his chief of staff, because I think it'd be great for us at the 5. Bring back the mooch.
Oh.
I mean, that would be great TV, man. No, I mean, I'm kidding. I love Anthony's
he would have been good.
He would have been good. You're right. I love Anthony. But so I think that you could sort of look at this as, can you get a political person from Congress like Meadows, or can you get a Trump loyalist, someone like Whitaker? I actually really like Chris Christie, because he's an interesting combination. His name has been out there about the political, because he's clearly been a governor, but also the legal, so he can help him get through both the politics and the legal. I think he needs an adult in the room, and I think John Kelly was a great chief of staff from what it looks like, and he had an incredible career, and he commanded respect from what he did in the Army, and I think that's the kind of person that the president needs.
What do you think, Juan?
Well, I think that the reason that Nick Ayers was up there was because Jared and Ivanka liked Nick Ayers, and they did not like John Kelly, and apparently at some point the president wasn't even talking to Kelly for the last few weeks, but the president called on Kelly, I guess it was back in June of 2017, and said, hey, let's stop with all the fighting. Let's clear this place out, you know, let's make it work. And so he was the general come to make the troops stand at attention, but it didn't work. It's just falls down.
I don't, who knows? I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs, but I do think it's kind of strange, Brian, that Nick Ayers had let his name basically be out there for a few months that he was possibly going to be the chief of staff, and then the president, I guess, offers it to him, and then he's like, oh, actually, I'm not going to do it?
They said both, everyone said great things about him. The president a glowing tweet, as well as Mike Pence a glowing tweet. It's got to be something
he's still going to be a part of the team at America First.
It's got to be someone with the triplets. He's got triplets.
I know.
And after a while, you're not making a ton of money. You're never home. No one knows that better than you. And then you just said, listen, do you want to do this for 2 more years? I actually have to do it. It seems to me that if Mark Meadows is as positive as he seems to be on the possibility, it seems it's to be his to lose. They obviously get along. My worry for Mark Meadows and for the president is the president's going to be successful if he understands what moderates think and what Democrats think.
Right.
Mark Meadows knows what President Trump thinks because they think alike. They're both conservative. They agree with the whole Freedom Caucus. The one person I'd keep in mind that would make sense would be David Bossie, because Bossie knows how to get the president to understand what's going on. He also can take a blistering and keep on ticking.
And he wrote the book, Let Trump Be Trump.
And would you also say, Dana, that it's important to know what it's like having the incoming of investigations? He was on the offensive against Hillary Clinton, and now he'll understand what's going to be coming at him, because he'll be there and he knows how to say.
If you have Meadows or Bossie, forget about any discussions with Nancy Pelosi, with Chuck Schumer. These guys come in and essentially they're going to reflect the hard right, the Freedom Caucus way of thinking. I don't think they have the capacity even to calm the waters in the White House. And believe me, that's a big issue right now. Remember, Trump went after Obama and said, oh, you can't even keep a chief of staff. In less than 2 years, he's had now 3.
Well, you're right.
And it's a 62% turnover rate in this White House.
Whoever becomes chief of staff, the media is going to come after so hard, and they're going to try to get him to get fired, because they can say this White House has gone through more chiefs of staff than any other White House, so they have to expect that.
Christie makes sense, except if he gets on. They evidently broke the ice with Jared and Ivanka. Like it or not, that's the way it is. And evidently they broke through and had an understanding. I think it'd be perfect for it if he finds a way to do something he wasn't able to do before, and that is sustain himself with the president. Remember, he had the transition team. He had the transition team. They blew it up. And then he looked like he was going to be attorney general. They kind of blew it up. And I'm just wondering, for him, on the surface, he'd be the perfect guy, because he knows how to work with Democrats in New Jersey. He also knows how to fight, my goodness.
Well, he might not be able to
knows the
take
legal thing.
Pay cut either.
You know, whoever gets the job,
the same thing as governor.
Whoever gets the job better get a lawyer.
All right, well, that's good advice, Juan. Everyone needs a lawyer.
A little depressing.
All right, up next, new government shutdown fears as President Trump gets ready to face off with 2 of his biggest border wall opponents tomorrow. We'll tell you about it.
big meeting at the White House tomorrow. The president set to face off with minority leaders Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. They're going to hash out border wall funding in order to try to prevent a possible government shutdown. Nancy Pelosi, though, adamant there will be no wall funding.
Most of us, speaking for myself, consider the wall immoral, ineffective, inexpensive. And the president said he promised it. He also promised Mexico would pay for it. So even if they did, it's immoral still, and then they're not going to pay for it.
This funding fight comes amid new signs of desperation from the migrant caravan in Tijuana. New photos show an 8-month-old baby being passed through a hole underneath the wall and into the U.S. Brian, let me start with you. What do you say when people say, you know, the president has broken his promise on the wall, and now, at the last minute, he's trying to force the issue into a funding bill that would shut down portions of the government?
He should blame the Republicans a lot, too. They haven't made it a priority because it was his priority. He should be very angry at them. A couple of things. Why is it immoral to be able to control your border? And the fact is, they say, we'll give them $1.6 million, but it's for a fence, not a wall. Billion. Was for a fence, not a wall. That is flat-out politics. People can see through it. For someone who lives in San Francisco or the region, she doesn't tell me exactly where she lives. I'm wondering why. It's very brave of her to say we don't have to secure the border and it's immoral. She had that great line. Why don't they just mow the lawn so they can see through the grass? So this is pure politics. I think the caravan, as well as what's happening in Tijuana, the mayor coming forward, and the fact that the midterms are over shows that this isn't pure politics. This is a problem. The fact that Mattis is extending their stay shows that they are doing some good. And I think that this is an issue. I thought in one way, Juan, this could be a border issue. That what do you need? You want infrastructure first up next time? Give me this now. We're in the lame duck session. We lead with infrastructure next. But Nancy Pelosi's concerned about blowing the speakership, which seems to be hers.
Well, you know, Dana, I'm listening to Brian. I'm thinking to myself, Democrats don't care about border security. They put a lot of money into border security.
Used to.
Well, they have. That's not, you know, it depends. They have, and they voted for it in the past. So you think, well, why do you have a problem with it now? But it depends on how you want to communicate, right? So they're setting their own narrative, and they're not leading with that foot. They're leading with the other foot. I think this meeting tomorrow is very interesting. I can imagine the strategy meetings that are happening today to prepare for tomorrow's meeting. It will be interesting to see how they come together or not for this first one. Chuck and Nancy and the nicknames and everything, can they figure out a way to work together? And maybe everything will look good in the meeting. And then remember what happened last time, though. This is the Democrats' complaint. They thought they had a deal. They go back to the Hill. They find out, actually, the deal fell apart between their ride from the White House to Capitol Hill.
You mean
so everybody goes in with a lot of distrust tomorrow. And it's up to the leaders. I mean, everybody gets a choice to make. And you can decide to work together tomorrow or not.
Well, let's go to Mr. Botox. I'm interested.
I don't think that nickname's going to work.
You don't think? Okay. Well, I'll call President Trump because he's so good at them. But let me ask you, your negotiating skills. The idea is the president would budge on Dreamers in exchange for a deal that would give him, I guess he's asking for $5 billion for the wall.
Well, I don't think they're going to take it. I mean, they had $25 billion for amnesty for 1.7 million Dreamers, and then he said either the S-hole comment or they wanted to add on all of the lottery and merit-based stuff and chain, and then the deal fell apart. So I don't see it happening. The only chance he's going to have is in the last month. I mean, think about it. Until the Congress flips, this is his last at-bat in order to squeeze billions for this wall. And if you think about it, he has a pretty high threshold for political pain. He can withstand a lot. So he could really take it to the brink and say, hey, guys, you're not going home for Christmas.
December 21st.
We're going right to the end of this thing. And, you know, I'll take the heat in order to get this wall because I'm not going to get it until 2020. And, you know, it will rattle the markets because, you know, you have all this consumer spending going into the Christmas season. But I think it's so desperate that he might have to pull that out. Right now, Chuck Schumer still a little bit, has got some PTSD from the Schumer shutdown. Remember, he chose the illegals over the vets. So he's not looking to really make waves. And Nancy, I agree, she really needs to watch her left flank because she doesn't want to give too much right as she assumes the speakership. This is the resistance Congress.
Well, let me ask Morgan then. Morgan, the president seems as if he's willing to have a shutdown. I think politically history shows that the party that is behind the shutdown gets the blame. So it's not a political winner.
Except for the
well,
last
that's true, yeah, except for the last one where Schumer got blamed. I don't think it's fair to sort of, if there is a shutdown, to blame it on this president. I think, as Brian alluded to earlier, it's actually a failure of congressional leadership. If anything, the president has been clear to Republicans and Democrats in leadership in Congress
Mitch McConnell
that he
didn't want
wanted $5 billion, right, and he didn't get it. And so really, I think what you're seeing is an appropriations failure, not to get too wonky.
Yeah.
But in August, they canceled the recess. Why, right? In order to get all of the appropriations done. They got 75% done. They got defense spending done this year. But now you've got people charging the border, and you don't have DHS funding, border security done. So I think that we really need to take a look at, why does congressional leadership always let it come down to the wire on this? Well, it's because it benefits them. Because on both sides of the aisle, when it comes down to the wire, then they have more power. Then the four of them can get in the room with the president and make decisions that should be made in the regular order on behalf of the Congress. Look what Senator Perdue, Senator Langford, and Senator Ernst are doing to try to reform the budget process. Keep in mind, there's more to it than just a shutdown. It's congressional leadership trying to keep power into their hands into the last minute to make decisions in a closed-door room without the entire Congress.
Yeah, I just want what leverage does the president have in the lame duck side? That's the question. It's what leverage? What does Nancy Pelosi have to do? What does Schumer have to do? And what do they want in return? Besides to go home for Christmas.
Yeah.
But and maybe it is
she's not elected
a guarantee
speaker yet.
to do infrastructure first off in the new year. I'm not saying I would take the deal,
I think
but
there's
that's
going to be an effort to try to get some things done, but I don't think giving him a wall, which everybody says is pretty ineffective, I don't see how.
Not everyone does not say it's ineffective.
I don't know who says it's effective.
Maybe you say it's ineffective.
All right. Jim Comey taking another shot at President Trump and tells Americans who they should vote for. Yeah, really. That's next on The Five.
All right, James Comey unleashing another partisan attack in his ongoing feud with President Trump.
All of us should use every breath we have to make sure that the lying stops on January 20th, 2021. I understand the Democrats have important debates to have about who their candidate should be. They have to win.
Yeah.
They have to win.
So he's not going to be voting for Trump. I have a source. The president is punching back by calling Comey a major liar. This comes after Comey refused to answer questions and claimed not to remember or that he didn't know over 200 times during congressional testimony on Friday. So, Dana, he goes to the 90-second why and is very confident that he did a good job behind closed doors. But the fact is, when it comes to the dossier, when it comes to the Flynn story and others, he still has many questions and a lot of things he didn't answer.
I've lost track, to be honest. And I think that...
Too subtle? This whole thing is too subtle?
Well, it's like, I have respect for anybody who worked in government, and especially in law enforcement. He's got a point of view. I do think that now that he is being so partisan, that it takes away from his ability to say what a great guy he was, right? That he was being straight and narrow. He was just the FBI guy. He was trying to serve his country. And I also think it's pretty interesting, like friends of mine that are Democrats, they don't like him.
I know.
They don't want his advice on who they should choose for president.
Right. Jesse, there's something that did stand out is that with Peter Strzok, very obvious. I know some of this stuff gets drilling down too deep and people say, I got 20 things to do. I don't know what the Republicans or Democrats are talking about. But Peter Strzok is that guy who is text messaging with Lisa Page what a bad person Donald Trump is. He said, well, if I saw those text messages, I would have let him go. But I would have let him stay on the case because he didn't show anti-Trump bias.
Right.
So Peter Strzok didn't show anti-Trump bias?
He's too biased for Mueller's investigation, but he's fine with James Comey. That's what it comes down to. And Comey, for being such a smart person, can't remember anything. Look what he said about the Clinton FBI interview. He doesn't even know who drafted the questions. He doesn't even know if his team shared the questions ahead of time with Clinton. He doesn't know why any of the Clinton witnesses weren't subpoenaed and, questioned before a grand jury. He knows nothing. He doesn't even know who paid for the dossier. He doesn't know if the dossier was verified. He said the dossier wasn't verified before they use it for a FISA warrant and then after they use it. He also said he couldn't remember when he was briefed on the Wiener laptop material. His story changed on that.
You know why, though? Because of McCabe. McCabe said he says a different story than Comey.
And that conflicts, their testimony does. And now he's said, and this changes the entire situation, he says that they opened up a counter-espionage investigation into 4 Americans by the end of July in 2016. That means what started the investigation? We were told all along that it was Papadopoulos that triggered this whole thing. Now we know at the end of the summer, 4 Americans were under surveillance and being investigated.
But the counterintelligence
what does that have anything to do with
started in the spring of 2015.
Right, and that story keeps changing.
But that's me to say, he made it very clear. You guys want to position this as partisan. He said Donald Trump was not one of the 4. So, I mean, clearly...
The people that work
for him.
Just
4 people in his orbit were.
But they were working for him.
They could be, but he said it was not Donald Trump. And also, he said he thinks impeachment's a mistake. It would muddy the waters. Instead, he says, let's go to the election and let's be sure that we get out this person who is violating American values and standards, Donald Trump.
Juan, do you care what James Comey wants?
Yeah, well, he's a player in this. He is a
what do you
major
think?
player.
Do you care
I did
about
not approve of the way he handled the Hillary Clinton situation by going out there and acting as if he was the attorney general. That was improper.
If anyone deserves not to be heard from, it's him.
Oh,
Morgan,
that's not fair.
Your thoughts?
He's a big player in this, and he knows
He's
a lot.
tall. I'll
which
give you
is
that.
why the Republicans were the ones that dragged them in there, and then he made the deal to releasing the transcript. This was a Republican play.
I cringe every time he speaks publicly, and it inevitably does not go well for him. It goes bad, right? I mean, going back to the Hillary Clinton investigation when he gave that highly inappropriate press conference that went beyond FBI precedent. And what also bothers me about it is it's not just him, it's also Brennan, the CIA director. These positions...
Making blistering comments.
Making the worst comments. And these positions have long been nonpartisan, right? These intelligence positions, these investigative positions. And so my friends who are working in these agencies, who are working in the FBI, I feel like he somewhat taints their reputation by going out and doing it.
You're being so nice. Somewhat taints. They're furious.
Yes, I would agree. So, you know, anybody who was wondering if Comey was on a political jihad, I mean, if you're looking at his comments, if you're looking at Strzok, if you're looking at Brennan, how is an average American supposed to look at what comes out of their mouth and what comes out of their tweets and come to any other conclusion?
But Dana, wait a second. I'll tell you what conclusion they could come to. This president is trying to undermine the credibility of the FBI, the CIA, anybody that questions his illegal
Because on further
actions.
review, there should not be a Mueller probe.
The CIA has not questioned any of his actions.
Oh,
That's
yes,
not the
but
authority
the
of
CIA has confirmed that Russia interfered in this in the 2016 election, and
But
Trump
but
wants
the
to ignore
CIA
it.
has
The
not
CIA
linked,
goes
the
after
CIA has
Khashoggi.
not linked that to President Trump, and we
No,
cannot
they said the
that's
Russians
disinformation,
interfered.
Juan.
The Russians interfered, and he doesn't want to
everyone has
hear,
said that.
just like he
Pompeo
doesn't
has
want to
said
hear
that.
from the CIA that
He doesn't-
Khashoggi was
Hey,
killed
Juan.
by the
Well, wait a minute.
Saudis.
It's disinformation to link the CIA to President Trump. The CIA, Pompeo, and everyone has said that Russians interfered.
That's what I'm
But the
saying.
CIA
He doesn't
has
wanna-
never
he
said that
doesn't
it was
wanna
So
never
keep the
linked
CIA,
to
well, let's
Trump.
agree to keep the CIA out of it because they're going to be angry at us and
don't need
surveil us. Dana, but Comey did get what he wanted, didn't he? He got
Attention?
revenge. He got his New York Times story that got the Mueller, that launched the Mueller probe through the elite, and he's got to sit back and then he watches Donald Trump scramble because that's the guy that fired him. So he, in one way, Comey's getting what he wants. He gets a celebrity status, and he gets this president investigated.
I don't know what Comey wants. I mean, I don't. I don't know what's in his heart. I don't know what's in his mind. He doesn't even know what's in his mind. He doesn't remember.
Well, we do know this. He investigated both presidential candidates, a Republican and a Democrat, and whenever you ask him a question about it, he doesn't remember.
Yeah, I know. He's the king of England. He has nothing to do with policy. I just worked at the FBI. They gave me a pass. All right, 18 minutes before the top of the hour. Think twice about what you post online because you could be taken down by the PC police for it years later. Those stories are next.